Okay, so the book that I chose for summer reading is If I Die in a Combat Zone, Box Me Up and Ship Me Home. And this book was a memoir written by Tim O'Brien during his lifetime, just during his time in Vietnam. Personally, I chose this book for summer reading because I have a particular interest in war themed media, especially having to do with the Vietnam War. Some of my favorite movies are based off the Vietnam era, such as Apocalypse Now, Platoon, Full Metal Jacket. Anyways, the book starts out with O'Brien telling you about his childhood growing up in Worthington, Minnesota. There, he was influenced by war through just World War II veterans and etc. O'Brien continues to explain how he has been drafted to fight in the Vietnam War. As a recent college grad, O'Brien is confused as to why he was drafted and talks about how he opposes the war and considers ways on how he can avoid it. He then takes you to his training in Fort Lewis, Washington. There he meets another draftee named Eric. Tim and Eric both share the same views on the war, and they both oppose and philosophically the government and war. After the training, the two are separated, however, and O'Brien proceeds to infantry camp. And after a short stint in infantry camp, O'Brien begins his tour in Vietnam. He's assigned to Alpha Company and is stationed as part of the 5th Battalion, 46th Infantry, in the landing zone headquarters in My Lai. The book progresses, and O'Brien speaks of the various ambushes and invasions that he witnesses and is a part of. He really paints a vivid image to the reader as to what war is like, with his various descriptions of such things as mines and the overall horrors of war. Furthermore, as a result of an accidental bombing of a village by a battalion that Alpha Company was protecting, O'Brien is offered a job away from fighting, and the book ends with him being flown back home. Throughout the course of the book, O'Brien matures from being an arrogant and cocky college student to a courageous and respected veteran. In the beginning of the book, O'Brien completely opposes the war and finds it ridiculous that he's been drafted. As a result, he contemplates trying to avoid going. One character that definitely left a negative influence on his growth was Eric, whom he met at Fort Lewis. Eric had a similar story to O'Brien and shared the same philosophical views on the war with him. They both were overall scared of going into the war, and that's why I felt they opposed it as a result. Uh, in contrast, O'Brien's views on the war were highly influenced and changed during his tour of duty. Through the multiple invasions, bombings, crawlings through pitch black tunnels, and overall terrors that he witnessed, Tim matured from being afraid and opposed to the war to being very courageous and knowledgeable by the end of his duty. In particular, O'Brien's encounters with landmines while walking through My Lai really left a mark on his growth. He sees and tells about the terror that these mines bring not only to his troops but also to the innocent Vietnamese citizens. While stationed in Vietnam, O'Brien learns that courage is one of the most vital attributes that all men should have. Through his tour of duty, O'Brien overcomes his fears of war and anything else and truly becomes afraid of nothing. In addition, many of his fellow soldiers help fulfill his growth. For example, he meets a man named Captain Johansson. Johansson represents all that O'Brien strives to become while in Vietnam. That is someone who fears nothing. In a way, Captain Johansson represents O'Brien's hero. By the end of his tour, O'Brien explains how he achieves this feeling of courage and how he has grown to fear nothing. He goes on to explain that all men should feel the same way and that not all war is bad. O'Brien's character arc is definitely one of the most impressive and compelling that I've ever read or came across. O'Brien's growth as a character reminds me a lot of Achilles from the Iliad by Homer. At first, Achilles does not want to fight in the Trojan War because he knows of his fate prior to the war, and it serves him no purpose. However, he decides to go to war to earn a sense of pride and glory. Although O'Brien may not be the greatest warrior in all of ancient Greece, and he did not know whether or not he would die, he definitely connects to Achilles because they both do not want to go to war at first. However, by going to war, they earn a sense of pride and courage. Also, O'Brien completely reminds me of Joker from the movie Full Metal Jacket, which I talked about earlier. Like O'Brien, at first, Joker is scared of going into Vietnam. However, through his own tour, he also experiences all of the horrors imaginable of war, and in the end becomes mature and becomes afraid of nothing, like O'Brien. I would recommend this book to any war buffs out there, and to anyone that wants to listen to a different perspective of the Vietnam War. O'Brien doesn't focus on how awful the Vietnam War is, like many other perspectives do. He even states that not all wars are bad. I feel anyone my age would really enjoy this book, and overall, I definitely recommend this book to just about anybody. Definitely a really good read, and I really enjoyed it. So,